Welcome back to another episode of the Gap Down Backward Podcast. Today we have Coach Klee with us, the DC at Coloma High School in Michigan. Coach, how you doing?
Doing great. Excited to be back on. Definitely a little different. Not used to not coming on with a presentation kind of already planned and kind of spitball things here and discuss things, catch up. Always good to talk with you.
Well, yeah, Coach Klee just got done listening to me rant for about 5 minutes, so on a variety of topics. Just
therapy lesson session time.
Yeah, I mean, just in case somebody doesn't know who you are, I mean, because you're one of our fellow YouTube guys, which his YouTube link will be below. Check out his stuff, and we'll talk about some of that stuff here in a minute. How did you end up as the DC at Coloma coach?
My coaching career, got really blessed. Went to Saginaw Valley State University. Wasn't their Division II school, and at the time, I would like to take some credit for the success that the football program had as I went through, but I was not a player there. They had some really good players go through at that time. And Division II football wasn't in the cards. I wasn't exposed to what Division III football is and how that maybe would have been an opportunity to extend my playing career. So got blessed with coaching for my Uncle Kerry Messing at a place called Reese High School in Michigan. It was about a 20-minute drive from college. So it was me just doing what I was already doing. I was planning on becoming a teacher and just went to school during the day. And after school, I went to practice, volunteered there for 4 years. The head coach is a guy by the name of Bob Saylor. He's like an I formation veer offense guy. The defensive coordinator, Bob Bouvet, ran under front, was cover 2 when I first started there, and then switched to some cover 2, cover 4 stuff. Just a great place to learn. They played in 2 state semifinals at the varsity level, and 5 of the years I was there, I believe they qualified for the playoffs all 5 years at the varsity level, and got to coach in a really, really outstanding program at the JV and the freshman levels. Ended up in a place called Osceola, Michigan for a while, kind of up along Lake Huron. And after 4 years there, my wife wanted to make sure, gave her some better job opportunities. She was kind of stuck in the job she was at that time. So started looking for jobs. Ended up at a place called Cassopolis in Southwest Michigan here. She eventually found a job at KitchenAid, Whirlpool, and that's where she works. So let her triple her income over the course of about 4 years. Just a tremendous opportunity we were blessed with. As I was working at Cassopolis, opportunity came along to go to Coloma High School, and it was a little closer to St. Joseph and the Benton Harbor area where my wife was working. So moved that way. Been here for the past 7 years, 6 of which with a guy by the name of Joe Stevens as my head coach. He completely talked to him, and we got on the same page about things. And by year 2, he completely trusted me with the defense, kind of let me make it my own. And we found some answers to improve, to go from school. I think there were about 4 1-8 seasons before we took over together. And we've had 3 of the past 6 years have been winning seasons. And we at least compete week in, week out against just about everybody. So that's how I've gotten to where I've been in the past 18 years I've been able to coach.
Now, I mean, we met obviously because we both run YouTube channels and we've kind of done stuff back and forth. And your channel originally started off as more of a defending the power T, which we'll get to here in a minute. But I mean, it's expanded a little bit since then, and you've added some other stuff. And what was kind of the motivation for you to start your YouTube channel?
Coach Mac, Thomas McPherson, him on YouTube does a great job, and really loved how detailed he was with X's and O's in his presentation. And then he ended up doing a cover 3 inside zone kind of like cross channel thing with Nate Elbaugh over at Chief Pigskin and stuff.
Yeah.
And ended up watching every single one of Nate's film Fridays. Those were outstanding. His season 1 film Fridays is sweet, and I get why he did that, because he had a really, really good team. And like when you have a really good team, like you want to relive it. Our best team that was literally 2 plays away from being a 8-1 team, three plays away from being an 8-1 team. Like I catch myself watching that on Huddle, and I share that on YouTube a lot. But his season 2 was outstanding because he's showing so many like little coaching points directly off the game film, and that's how I guess I learned football best. So my thought process was, all right, put together the X and O side with either diagrams or whiteboard type deals that Coach Mack does, and then follow it up with video like Coach Albaugh was doing. And then on top of that, I guess it's just kind of not that it's a business model or anything, but like people want to learn things that they haven't learned before, haven't seen before. And in my first video talking about trying to defend the tee, I joked around. I'm like, I haven't ever come across a video like this, and that's probably because power tee coaches are going to say like, "Oh, it's not possible. Stop it." And they might be right to an extent, but there's you can stumble across some power tee stuff on YouTube from an offensive perspective. I had never seen it from a defensive perspective. We play a really, really good football program in Constantine down in Southwest Michigan here, coached by Sean Griffith, and they're outstanding. I mean, they scored I think 8 trap touchdowns in 2016 against us. It's just a very embarrassing game from a defensive coordinator standpoint. Luckily, my head coach understood that it wasn't entirely schematics necessarily that led to that, and he kept me on, and we made some adjustments to the defense. And the following year, after giving up 68 points, we turned around and shut them out. So big turnaround, and I felt like at that point I was at least qualified to share some ideas because I actually had evidence of those ideas working, and talking about defending the power tee was something that was unique, and it maybe cornered me into a little bit of a niche, but I think it's good to have niches. As a person, as a coach, as a teacher, you know, wherever you kind of fit in, you got to find your place and thrive there. And so that's like the first 7 videos I put out was about that. It's because I had like 1,000 some clips of us defending it. I had 200 some clips of us defending it in practice. So that's how I transitioned to go out there and put myself out there, expose myself, I guess, a little bit, try to get back to the coaching.
Yeah, good. And I think that's where a lot of us have kind of, especially that do this, has been inspired by either be the Coach Mack and all the stuff, because him and Coach Ron Mackey were probably the 2 big initial YouTube guys. Albaugh put a bunch of stuff on YouTube and did sheep pigskin. And like I said, it's well known. I used to work for Nate for a couple months, helped him with some of his stuff, and I love the stuff that he does, and he does a really good job. And I've done 3 presentations for his website. But I think a lot of those were a lot of motivating factors, and then COVID kind of helped blow it up for hey, I got time to do this now. Problem is I don't know how to stop anything, so I've done it nonstop since then. But like I said, I mean, how do I want to word this next question? Why is the power tee is a very unique thing? I'll phrase it that way. Like, it's the old. I mean, you just don't see it a lot. But your state, like, there's that weird like 4-state corner where it's still, at least small school wise, it's prevalent. But it's prevalent. I mean, some big schools still run it, but like Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and then
you go to a Minnesota or Michigan, like the state championship games, you're gonna see a few teams running power tee. The biggest size that has won the state title recently here in Michigan is Edwardsburg's in the southern part of the state. We used to, before I got to my first year at Coloma, we played them before we left that conference that we were playing in. We were small fish and a pretty damn big pond of some really good football and all that. But they won the Division III state title here 3 years ago and whatnot. You turn on state finals, like you are going to see the power tee. I think the reason it's held on, I think the reason it's successful is ultimately the better power tee teams. They're coached by really, really good coaches. The focus on the discipline required to be successful in that offense, I think, ends up permeating the entire football program and causing some of the culture of the program. The T coaches always kind of sell the selflessness of it, and that's always a big culture builder type thing. Is when guys are truly just playing for each other, they're doing what they need to do for each other. I think it's every bit as much some of the culture that goes along with those programs that the offense kind of naturally lends itself to, that ends up keeping it really, really successful, especially at the smaller school level where you got to have interchangeable guys from year to year, and it can't be overly. It shouldn't be overly, I guess, any one position dependent. And I'd argue it's probably more dependent on what the offensive line's doing up in front. And I think there's a lot of coaches that coach the T that are really, really confident that they're going to be able to get the 7 offensive linemen and the 2 halfbacks blocking their butts off to get the offense to go. That makes it successful.
Yeah, and I joked with one of my buddies. 'Cause I think you maybe saw that tweet I put out, it was like a week ago, about closet power T coach, because he always talks about, he's been a spread guy for 15, 20 years, whatever it is now. But you pull up like a lot of his old 90s, early 2000s film, he talks about flexbone and power I and all this other stuff. And when in doubt, they just go back to the power T. I just like busted his butt about that. But like obviously like, and we talked about this before we came on too. I there's this bad rap that I'm just a wing T coach and that's all I do. But the thing with the wing T is you're not stuck to like one run game. Like Allball's a great example of that. He's a big rocket sweep guy out of his stuff. There's jet people, buck sweep. Past 2 years we were a big belly team. That was our main play, belly. It wasn't buck sweep. We didn't run buck sweep the past 2 years. Would that be fair to say for the power T teams too, that are they all just like it's power trap driven, or is there kind of some little leeway? I mean, obviously formations are a little limited, but
it's like everything else. In the Edwardsburg's extreme, I guess. Like I don't see them break 32 personnel, double tight, 3 backs. I haven't seen them break that in years. And I don't obviously watch all the games, but you see highlights. It's like, okay, there's the team. Constantine, who we play, like they had 2 outstanding halfbacks. Kind of, dear Lord, they ended up, one of their fullbacks ended up at tight end because the JV fullback was probably a better ball carrier. So they got some really athletic guys on the field, and they started doing some stuff with a little bit of jet motion and stuff like that. Like they're still utilizing that power blocking scheme.
Yeah.
They ran a little bit more sweep because they probably got a little bit more speed. They end up in the I formation a little bit. Just like any run-based offense, really run-focused offense where you're running the ball 40, 50, 60 times in a game. The play-action opportunities that set that up. And then on top of that, the couple that branch out, especially formation-wise, that can be a complete pain in the butt because instead of just stopping the big 3 plays of trap, power, teeth, and making sure you don't get beat by play action, you got to spend time lining up against those other formations. Otherwise, that's a cheap touchdown if they got a kid that can throw it all. Constantine kind of has that a little bit right now. We play another school, Delton Kellogg, and they're definitely T teams will have a little different flavor. Like, are they more trap driven to set up the power, or are they more power driven to set up the trap? And Delton's way more power based, and they'll block. I mean, you get 3 or 4 different variations of power at the point of attack where they're base blocking and leading the back and the guard up through. They'll run power a hole wider sometimes. So that creates a little bit of a issue for your players and some of your play calls on making sure they adjust their fit a little bit based off how they're changing those variations. They got to undertake like the open gap and stuff. So
good. Now, like I said, you mentioned formations here. Like that's we talked a little bit tight double wing before we came on as well, and I spent a couple years in that system. And I mean, obviously, Jason Mensing, one of the big double wing guys, is in your state.
Yeah.
And he talks about all that time. Year one, it's base. Year two, you start having fun because you had formations, and that's, I mean, like any offense, if you can be multiple and still run your stuff, it causes problems because your blocking rules don't change too much if they do at all. It depending on who's lined up where and so forth. So I agree it causes some problems. Now from that, when I mean, obviously you have, and again, people can check out your YouTube link below. Um, but where are you looking for when you're like, you're going to play a power T team next week and you get the film? What is the first thing you're scouting or looking for or looking to prep for that week?
As we talked in the kind of show prep here, in 2017 when we shut out Constantine, I was really focused on which back are they trying to really get the ball to. And sometimes when everything's going really, really well, that T coach does a great job of hiding who his best ball carrier is, because all the carriers are usually evenly distributed. When they get in the game now, where they end up in a crunch situation, it becomes really obvious if you go look at those critical a third down and maybe 5, because them 3rd and 1, whatever, 3rd and 2, whatever, you can trap power keep, maybe a counter on a 3rd and short play, but you get to a 4th down play or a 2-point conversion in a 1-score ball game. You start to learn what I call their nut cutting plays. I mean, what are they going to do when it's nut cut time? Everything's on the table, so to speak. And there's a school called Goebbels that we played a few years ago. Like their play was their running quarterback keep to the left. So it's kind of finding those tendencies and then finding those personnel players that they favor, who their dude is, and being able to both adjust your call, and I think more importantly, normally we flip field and boundary against every other team we play. I want faster guys to the field a little bit, and if you're a little slower, you can play to the boundary. We got less space to play in as an outside linebacker, or defensive end, or 4 technique, 5 technique. You don't have as far to run to the sideline. You're probably not going to get as many sweep and outside zone stretch perimeter type schemes there. When we play a T team, I want our guys a little bit more focused on the fundamentals of I'm taking on the double team with my left shoulder because I'm playing on the left side, or I'm squeezing down with my right foot and I'm going to spill things with my left shoulder because I'm playing on the left side. So going into that week, I'll make sure that we really kind of stat up, hey, they got this guy 40% of the offensive touches. He's running the ball to the offensive right, the defensive left. That's where I'm going to put my best 4 or 5 technique type kid. That's where the better 9 technique outside linebacker is going to play. He's going to play on that side. Sometimes it's a little bit based on what they'll run the ball to a certain tight end. Usually they marry those two up. If the left halfback is their dude, usually the right tight end is. We played Delton had a 300-pound offensive tackle who, as a sophomore, he had moved out to tight end because of some injury issues. Well, this year he played tight end the whole time, which makes a ton of sense. They're trying to establish C-gap. He's going to come down and double team a 5 technique, and or he's going to lock on to a much smaller, 9 technique outside linebacker and kind of make that kid disappear. So it's trying to get the personnel matched up to win a couple one-on-ones based on where they're placing their dudes and their personnel.
Okay. Now continue with the scouting before we get into a couple other things. The data you look at, and you kind of mentioned a little bit there, and when you're scouting, change at all when you're going up against them? Obviously, you don't have 1,800 spread concepts or passing concepts you have to worry about. I mean, just like the wing tee and the double tight double wing, you're kind of limited on what you can physically throw because you're in a condensed set. Yeah. You have 2 or 3 guys in the backfield. Okay, you're limited on the route combination you can do. So does that affect any of the data entry you do on huddle or in how you scout in terms of actual breakdown? I mean, obviously you mentioned tracking who the primary ball carrier, but is there anything else that's kind of, okay, this is drastically different this week that we got to focus on?
I guess not crazy different. I question, I guess, how many power schemes they have and how many times I've like caught their kids like having a brain fart, not blocking a rule perfectly and whatnot. Because I swear I've got about 10 different variations of power in the playlist, pre-populated in huddle, to go and tag on how they're blocking at the point of attack, whether they're pulling a guard or not, based off what the backfield action is. Is the pullback on the midline with the trap fake, or is he part of the lead blocking there? So you spend way more time, and this is where I think to the naked eye or a coach who hasn't seen it before, you're like, oh man, they just run the C-gap power over and over again. Well, they end up running it, 4 or 5 different ways sometimes in a single game. And Constantine, I think I've got like 150 some scout cards, saved on them. And now part of it is us trying to play with multiple fronts against them to throw different things at them. But you spend way more time looking at what that actual blocking scheme is, what they're trying to do with the backfield action, something that without telling T coaches what to run, but anytime they get power fake, counter fake, and then still run the trap, I mean, they got ball carriers coming in 3 different into the tag. Something like that is kind of a big deal, because that's going to affect how your secondary keys fit. And some of the run support you have after the trap will get spilled out if the interior does what it's supposed to do. So it ends up being, in some ways, more tedious, because the adjustments that they have are much smaller. And then you also got to factor in, well, are they calling that play? Would they call that blocking version against how we're going to line up?
Yeah. Because
there's certain teams. I mean, you look at how some teams line up against them, and you're like, well, no wonder you gave up 40 points in that game, because they kept hitting you in B gap, and you never made an adjustment to a B gap power, or you gave a T team C gap.
Yeah.
All night. You're gonna lock down on a 3 technique and kick out on a 9 technique and go 3 C gap over and over again. So those are all the things, I guess, that go into scout.
That was going to be my next question to you is, like, how much do you look at the prior opponents and see how they lined up and what success and failures they have? Because I talked to, great example is I talked to John Puckett the other day, who's DC at Centerville, and one of the things he's known for in our area outside of his rip list stuff is defending the triple. And he always has slight alterations each year, so obviously you want to see what people do. How much do you look at that? I mean, obviously you just mentioned there, okay, this is why they got gashed, because they didn't adjust here, but how much are you looking at the successes and failures compared to, okay, I'm looking at what schemes they're running?
You're definitely doing that based on what you know about the quality of the opponent that they were playing, and if their scheme is anything similar to what you would be calling on that particular night. I mean, the one thing I do take a little bit of pride in is we've gotten to the point that we do such a good job, for the most part, still in trap, and making sure trap doesn't gash us for 8 touchdowns in a single game anymore. A couple of T teams, they don't run trap on their adjustment instead of a trap scheme, doubling and kick out, getting that wall of down blocks, is to just run a straight dive, which if you're keying guards like we normally do, and I'm pretty sure they watch film, I'm sure they picked up on that. I don't ever worry about exposing that, because if they're watching film real well and whatnot, they're picking up on that. And that just makes your inside line. The first time our inside linebacker saw that, they were all a step slow, and it went for a 14-yard touchdown because of where the ball was on the field and all that. So the couple better teams, you definitely take a look at how they're defending it, see if that's something that, I guess, fits into what you already do, or if that a small adjustment that your kids can handle. You probably end up putting way more credence into assuming that they kind of have a similar flavor, who can carry the ball and stuff. You look at the previous year's film, probably a little bit more than some of the scout tape from that particular season, other than for getting a feel for how they're using their personnel that year.
Now, next question I'll ask you is do you ever, because I don't know the power T remotely as well as anybody up north. Um, how much option do you see out of that, and does that, if so, does that cause any problem, any more complexities for you? I mean, like I said, to me, you would try to run like load option or some sort of speed option, I would assume, but I don't know.
Thankfully, like we have like I know the quick Delton will give you the illusion of option. They basically run outside veer. They'll run a C gap dive. Quarterback's going to carry out a fake for D gap, and then the pitch back's going out wide. And your corners, I guess, got to respect that, right? You can one defensive adjustment. I guess we'd have in place if that was a big issue. Is we're going to the corners on a dog through the D gap. We're going to rip our 9 technique, try and kind of squeeze into the C gap and let our inside linebackers scrape clean, I guess, would kind of be an adjustment. Now we're maybe a little weaker against the dive part there because maybe they get the edge and our linebacker doesn't scrape fast enough. But that to me, that's just as good as outside veer, though, what they're doing.
Yeah.
Bottom line, all they got to do is get that outside linebacker 9 technique to not trust stepping down with the tight end down block, because all of a sudden, hey, the quarterback's in the face. I'm going to step out, get the quarterback. Here's my chance to hit him for the first time all night. And that illusion, I guess, ends up being a little bit of a pain in the butt to defend. I do know north of us, there's a school called Saugatuck, and about 5 or 6 years ago, their quarterback was just dying. The best player on the team, and one of the ways they ended up highlighting, besides running varieties of keeps and follows, or getting them out on play action with kind of run pass options, the old fashioned style run pass options. They ran some midline, and it's midline. While you're like, oh well, if you just did it like trap, you're going to be okay. And I guess in theory you are, but bottom line, if they insert that halfback in the B gap, which is what they're doing, fullback. They're not running fullback. They're going quarterback the whole time, but somebody's got to go back to the fullback. Otherwise, he's gashing in. If you're not stepping down with the down block on midline, you're going to end up getting trapped later on. I mean, that's if the fullback ended up with the ball or the quarterback got tackled because he should have gave it. The next play probably coming is trap, so the quarterback doesn't have to make a decision. Like they got that answer is their bread and butter. So bottom line, once that halfback inserts, you got to get somebody from the secondary folding in and inserting, and that's anytime you get cornerbacks in cover 2 feeling like they got to fold in instead of playing fourth, or a safety getting more downhill, that's given an offense a chance to maybe get some play action going.
Yeah.
If kids aren't confirming with their keys first, that's their job. So luckily it's not there, and I think the biggest reason I'm surprised more don't do that variation of outside veer. And I coached for the 2 years that I was at Cassopolis, coached for a guy that wasn't straight power T, but definitely had a lot of T flavor. And it was a way more of a belly type series was his base. And he ran a little bit of buck, a little bit of buck sweep, and a little bit of trap, but it was mostly the belly play. And he had that C gap outside veer type play, and it was effect. I mean, he give the dive. All of a sudden, a kid steps in to play the dive. The next play, he'd tell the quarterback. Nobody else on the team would know. The quarterback keeps it around the end. Corner goes and sits on the pitch, and the quarterback's up through the alley for a 10-yard gain at least before anyone's putting the tackle on him. So I am surprised that some teams don't utilize that a little bit more. Plus, the pace of it ends up being even faster hitting than say power coming out to that C gap.
So 2 years from now, because this won't come out till towards the fall, you'll see a lot of that, and I apologize now. Apologize to you and the rest of the coaches in Michigan. Because that's like won't be like, that's a good idea.
Sharing stuff here and there on Twitter, man, the couple offensive coordinators like, man, I didn't pick these defensive guys' brain all the time because all you guys do is think about the worst case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think the defensive side of the ball what makes it I'll argue makes it a little bit harder is like that offense gets to pick what they want to do, and most teams, as you go on in the season, they have less and less that they're really holding back, and they can sneak out on you. But
Yeah.
knowing like, well, we're sound against all this, but if they do that, they're probably torn.
Now, I want to go with two final questions before we go, and I think I mean you spend a lot of time talking the power T and defending the power T, and and like I said, your channel's kind of morphed. You're starting to add more things. I saw some single wing stuff, some zone stuff on there that you started talking. Obviously, everybody can see the whiteboard behind your head, and like I said, you do a lot of great stuff with that. Yep, there we go. See, look at that. Like you want some content, coach will pop out some good stuff for you. But like, ignoring the power T, like you get a normal's a bad word. It's a really bad. You get some sort of gun, like 2x2, 3x1. Like
all the T coaches, oof.
Yeah.
That T Mafia, man.
Whatever. Like
not good.
Them, the slot T Mafia. Them, the slot T Mafia, the angry wing team, double wing coaches, they whatever. I don't care. Like I don't have patience. I don't have time to listen. It's like it's just, if somebody listens to this is where I'm about to get myself in trouble. It's just like the argument about the conflict player on Twitter a couple weeks ago.
Oh yeah.
I just don't care. I really don't. Like I stay out of that stuff. I mind my own damn business. So first, a spread offense. What does your defense look like, and what do you prefer?
Obviously, if you make personnel equal, that some of the teams we face, like personnel a little bit better, and that makes it more challenging. I guess first part of that, our base defense, we transitioned in 2017 to odd front. We were already too high, like two read, cover 4, cover 2, making checks based off that, a little bit of cover 0 or robber type stuff there. So not a lot of middle of field close. We felt like anytime we were as an even front, anytime we're trying to play the T, we as a 4-2-5 team kept on ended up in some version of 4-4 or 6-2, and that creates a one high structure. That wasn't something we were comfortable with against the T. We didn't feel like we had the right amount of carryover against the T.
Yeah.
And by switching to that odd front, besides just getting better as coaches and being more focused on some really, really specific individual technique stuff, putting that nose on the center ended up disrupting the pole game a little bit. Our matchup at nose over the past 4 years has favored us in almost every we play. And we've had a couple different variations of nose there and stuff like that. So that schematically ended up making us better against everything. And ultimately, we kind of had the mindset of bottom line, we're chasing Constantine is the cream of the crop in our league that we're in the Southwest Athletic Conference here. So we felt like if we're chasing them and we coach up all the fundamentals and technique to be able to play really, really effectively against another disciplined football program, our guys are going to get enough teaching that we're going to be able to make adjustments to different offensive and different formations. My head coach and I we laugh at some of the misdirection that spread teams try to create with their backfield, and it's like, well, first of all, we're not looking in your backfield, so we don't care. And our kids will be downhill and it's great, especially from the inside linebackers. They don't fall for misdirection when there's only one back there. And we just end up making whatever adjustment we need to make with the outside linebacker based on the formation, on the number of receivers. So overall, I think the one thing that we have to make a big adjustment for with our kids, and it's really more of an indie thing than it is schematic, is making sure we're coaching up the actual pass rush against a spread team or normal, and the T guys, they probably take pride in not being normal. And what makes them a little bit successful. They're not on the bottom line. They're not. But we got to really kind of, if we come off the T week, we got to really, really coach up our guys on actually getting a pass rush. we get really good at sniffing out screens because we just don't have a great pass rush sometimes with some of our guys, and we're just, well, you can't screen us if we never actually pursue the quarterback as aggressively as we're supposed to. So it becomes way more of an individual thing, especially with the defensive line a little bit. And I think our DBs would probably rather be against. I think they'd rather be against the spread. I guess I've never asked them, but they end up, as much as they end up making tackles and they're really key in the run fits, making sure we don't get beat in play action. I think they're probably just a little more comfortable, being in our two read against two detach, letting the coverage with cloud and stuff, cloud coverage, rolling against 3-by-1 stuff, being one-on-one with that backside X receiver and kind of showing off their man coverage skills, so to speak. I think our guys probably like that a little bit. I don't think our linebackers, our inside linebackers, don't care. That's both. That's both. Like, they do what they do. They key their guards and they fly to the ball, and then also the kids we have there, they want to run. They're like, well, we're going to run around and be able to hit somebody and make a bunch of tackles and stuff. So it's fine. From the stuff that spread teams can do to end up creating. T teams can get you in that one-on-one tackle situation as well, but the things that a spread team can do to create one-on-ones where over the course of the night that one-on-one tackle favors the offense, in my opinion, that's a little bit, I guess, more intimidating from a defensive coordinator standpoint is some of the things that they can do there, and how they'll sneakily get in some option type concepts into what they're already doing that makes you got to make an adjustment somewhere sometimes with your rules, especially if there's a certain player that they're trying to really highlight and get the ball to with that option concept.
Yeah. Now, and then my last question for you before we go, Coach, is who do you like to study? Like, who do you like? Because I talked to obviously PJ Gibbs earlier today, and he because he's known Don Brown for about 20 years now. He just talks to Don Brown, which is nice. Don's a good guy. And then, like, I know my buddy Puckett is hardcore into Coach Vass and all the stuff he puts out on Ripple's stuff. Is there anybody you really like listening to or researching their stuff or looking at when you're looking at stuff?
A couple of kind of other high school coaches to a large extent. I know you've had. I think you've done some stuff with Kurt Twitchell.
Yes, I love Twitchell.
Yeah, he was at Portage Central. He got the Portage Northern head coaching gig here, and about 2 weeks before he got that job, him and I, we just hung out on a Zoom, and I listened to how he's defending the T with the 4-3. That's one of the things, I guess, given it's kind of like giving an opposite team the same look all night. Can kind of spell, at some point, if that offensive coordinator's just good, he doesn't even have to be great. If he's good, he's going to know how to get you at some point and make a touchdown happen, lower scoring game, or the game where you just need that one stop.
Yeah.
That being able to have some sort of change up, I think, is something important, and that's something I guess I've researched this off season. To some extent. The Centerville guy is the guy that is a cover 3 guy, right? Yeah. That you've had on your channel doing a clinic on cover 3, cover 6 stuff. And I know it's not T based, but looking at maybe doing some one high stuff and whatnot, just because we're gonna. It just, you never know what your personnel is going to be like, and you want to be able to give yourself, I guess options to maximize the personnel. Our schedule as a whole has transitioned to way more run-oriented football.
Okay.
Tight ends are back where we are. We faced one team all year that didn't use tight end. Everybody else, I would argue, I guess their base set had at least one tight end. I mean, we kind of packed it in, and we had a tight end, and I mean, our wing wasn't a tight end body, but we used him like a tight end. He's a tough kid, block people and whatnot. so kind of maybe looking at getting into some 8-man box, either a 4-4 or 5-3, 3-5 type deal, and playing one high behind that, because that just might give us a couple more eyes for the run game to some extent, I guess, and also just get more guys closer to the ball immediately, as opposed to playing two safeties at 8 yards and whatnot. And also just kind of factoring in who those kids are at safety for us. This past year, God bless our quarterback and our wide receiver, because they kept us in ball games. I mean, it was always the case. If we're one score away, all we got to do is get the ball to Drew and Cody, and we're going to throw the ball and we're going to get a touchdown. That's kind of how our season played out, all except for when we played Constantine in the last ball game of the year. They had more than a one-score lead, so we didn't have a shot at the end of the game there. But those guys, when they turned around and played safety for us, I mean, they were in the right spot, but they weren't somebody who's going to come up and kill the spill for a 1 or 2 yard gain. They're going to get slowly run over for a 4 or 5 yard gain. So kind of looking at just any coaches that are doing stuff different from us really is probably more intriguing than studying somebody who's exactly like us per se.
Okay, Coach. Well, coaches, again, make sure you check out his YouTube channel. The link will be below. Check out our sponsors' affiliates below. Like, share, subscribe as usual. And that's another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast.